This one aspect of running an e-commerce brand is something that every company struggles with. I've worked with billion-dollar companies and even they've had constant problems with this issue. But just because it's extremely difficult to do well doesn't mean it can be ignored, because ignoring it can crash your brand entirely. I'm talking about inventory management. And while it can get extremely complicated for billion-dollar brands with thousands of SKUs, tons of warehouses, and multiple sales channels, as a small and growing e-commerce brand, you can get a handle on it much more easily. But if you ignore it, you can run into some serious issues. So in this video, we'll cover 3 of the most common problems that e-commerce brands run into because they don't pay enough attention to inventory. Firstly, and one of the most common, is going out of stock. I can't tell you the number of times that we've been working with a brand, things are going great, we have some ads that are crushing it, and then all of a sudden performance falls off a cliff. So I'll go check the landing page to see if there's an issue, and there it is, out of stock. I'll turn off the ad and let the brand know, and they'll be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, we'll order some more. But this isn't just some minor thing. Not only were you wasting money on an ad sending people to an out of stock landing page, but you're also losing out on the revenue that high performing ad could have been generating while you're out of stock. There are customers who might have been interested in that product and who would have purchased, but now, because they're not interested in other products on your website, just won't convert at all. Not only does that send a bad signal to the algorithm, but it also gives your competitors an opportunity to acquire those customers instead. That also leads to the second major issue, which is increased expenses. So in a situation like that, where you realize one of your high performing products is suddenly out of stock, what do? You try to get it back in stock as quickly as possible. You can sweet talk your manufacturer to hopefully get them to produce your order a little bit faster, but the real lever that you have available is shipping. Air freight is much faster than shipping by sea, but it's also a lot more expensive. And when you're facing down the situation of a high performing product going out of stock and all the revenue you're going to miss out on that because of it, you're probably going to pay for the expensive shipping to get it in sooner. Ideally, you want to be able to plan reorders well in advance, so that way you can pay for slower shipping without missing out on any revenue. So you can have problems from having too little inventory, like missing out on revenue and having to pay for expensive shipping, but having too much inventory is also a problem. Without proper planning, it's very common for brands to buy too much inventory. And while on the one hand, it might seem like, okay, if you have too much inventory, at least you'll avoid going out of stock, it might not actually be as helpful as you think. Too much inventory of the wrong SKU can make it harder to have enough inventory of another SKU, because inventory costs cash and you have a limited amount of it. For example, let's say you sell 2 colors of t-shirts. You have black and a bright orange. Now, if you haven't done proper planning, you might think both of them will sell equally and you'll shell out a bunch of cash to get both in equal amounts. But maybe your customers love the black t-shirt and they're not really feeling the bright orange. In that situation, your black t-shirts might sell out and your orange ones might be left untouched. Now, you could use the profits from selling the black t-shirts to buy more, but you'll have less cash available than if you'd sold them both. And less cash means making smaller purchases, which means you have a higher risk of selling out again. And you could have avoided that had you not tied up all the cash in the bright orange t-shirts that nobody really wanted to buy. So what do most people do in that situation? Well, they put the bright orange t-shirt on a steep discount just to liquidate it and recover some cash so that they can buy more of the black t-shirts. And actually, this happens more often than you'd think. I once worked with an 8-figure client that had some 20,000 SKUs, so I decided to do an inventory analysis for them. And upon analyzing the data, I realized that about a third of the inventory that they had on hand had sold less than 10 units each. Those SKUs made up less than 4% of their total sales, but it was holding up $1 million in cash. Because they had so many SKUs, their inventory was just a total mess. So they lost track of how many SKUs they had in different categories and how much they were actually selling. So they would buy inventory to make sure that they have it on hand, but they wouldn't keep track of what was actually performing well. And so they didn't have a feedback loop to keep on improving their purchasing strategy, which is how they ended up with so much cash tied up in inventory that wasn't moving. Cash is the lifeblood of your business, so you always want to make sure that it's working as hard for you as possible. And it's not doing that if it's just sitting in a warehouse in the form of slow-moving inventory. So hopefully that helps illuminate why inventory management is so important. It's something that most brands don't focus enough on, and it's something that can cause some serious financial difficulties. But that also means that it doesn't take much to do it better than your competition. Even some basic effort into inventory planning can go a long way. So check out some of these videos that I've hopefully already filmed about inventory management and how you can get better at inventory planning in your e-commerce business.